Hey everyone, welcome to Taste Different Gaming Appetizers. What are we talking about this time? Well, another studio has unfortunately bit the dust. We've been here, it's a lot of, especially in 2023, it seemed there was a lot of studio closures. Now we've gone into 2024, and the first one to say goodbye is Firewall Games. So the studio behind, I'm sorry. It's not Firewall Games. The studio behind Firewall Games, the Firewall Games, quote unquote, because there was two of them. The VR studio First Contact Entertainment is the one that shut down. They say it's due to the lack of support within the VR industry. So the company created some PSVR games and PSVR 2 games, one of them Firewall 0 Hour and Firewall Ultra. They say, like I said, that the lack of support for VR within the industry was a factor in the decision. They shared the news. The First Contact Entertainment shared the news just before Christmas via a statement on Facebook. They say, after almost 8 years of working with the most amazing team I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of, I'm sad to announce that we'll be closing our company, First Contact Entertainment, by the end of the year. That's what the statement read. The lack of support for VR within the industry has eventually taken its toll. As a AAA VR game developer, we are just not able to justify the expense needed going forward. We are a team of fearless innovators, willing to push new technologies to its limits. So they say. First Contact said it was proud of its team and has shared its gratitude to those who supported the studio over the years. They released Firewall 0 Hour back on the PSVR in 2018, and a follow-up to that game on the PSVR 2 in last year. I don't know if that sure was, I'm assuming in 2022, but might have been in 2023. We can look up the year for that one, but Firewall Ultra when that came out. So, I mean, in my understanding, from some of the stuff we've looked at, and Shane looked at, and he might have some of the statistics here, but some of the stuff he looked at was the PSVR 2 didn't seem to be doing as hot for Sony as they had hoped, right? But it makes a lot of sense. I know before the PSVR 2 came out, we had many discussions on here. If you look at some of our previous, or if you've been around to see some of our previous videos, when we talked about PSVR 2, one of the biggest things that we saw with it was the barrier for entry, right? The cost. It's a cost. It's a huge cost, right? Compared to, right? Not compared to other VR headsets like the Steam VR headset or the HTC Vive or any of those, but compared to the Quest, right? You have to buy a PlayStation 5, that's $500, and then you have to go out and buy a PSVR 2, which I think those are $500 as well. And so that's $1,000 that you have to put down, plus not the price of the game, right? You have to then buy yourself, unless it's like a package or something, then you have to buy yourself a game, which those might be around $40 to $70, depending on the game for PSVR 2. Plus you have to have the room, right? Now it doesn't take a lot of room, but you still have to have the room, and you're tethered to the PS5. Whereas if you have a Quest, I think the Meta Quest 3, which is the newest one, I think it's $500. But you have, it's backwards compatible with the Meta Quest 2 games, which PSVR 2 is not backwards compatible with PSVR games. And with the Quest, you're not bound to the PlayStation. You don't have to go buy a PlayStation. All you have to buy is the Quest. And then you have VR, right? You can do it in any room of your house. My son has a Quest 2 and I've used it before. And basically you just draw kind of a barrier around you in the room that you're in, saying this is my space. And that's the space you play in, right? So now Sony's PSVR 2 probably may have the same concept. I'm not sure. I haven't used it. But again, you are tethered to the PlayStation 5. So I think that has something to do with it, but I think the barrier for entry, the cost associated it, I think a lot of people just look at the cost and go, I don't want to lay down another $500. Even though it would be cool to have one. Hell, I would love to have one. I just don't want to spend $500 on one. That's my only problem, right? If I had $500 just to blow for no reason, then maybe I would go, and buy one. But I don't. So I'm not going to. So I think that's going to be the biggest issue. Plus, I think also right now, granted, for me personally, I'm not. I don't keep too close of an eye on PSVR games, but it seems like there hasn't been a lot of games that I've seen, not necessarily released for the PSVR 2, just not out. When you look at news articles for gaming and you see things about games coming out and new games coming out and like articles about games coming out, like how often do you see a PlayStation VR 2 article about a game for PlayStation VR 2 coming out, right? I rarely see it. Now, I didn't say that they don't exist. I'm just saying, compared to the normal gaming atmosphere and landscape out there, you hardly ever see VR stories, right, of VR games. I think the newest VR game that I think even IGN gave like a 10 to, which is odd for a VR game, which was I can't remember what it was called. It just came out. It was like, shoot, I had the name of it and then I totally forgot what it was called. But anyway, we'll look it up here and let you know what it is. But that game, it was the number 2 of that game, I guess. But that game, I believe, is only on the Quest. It is not a PSVR 2 game. So even a game that's really kind of was created to sell the PSVR 2, Horizon, Call of the Mountain, even though that was kind of like, their kind of haymaker to say like, hey, you need to buy a PSVR 2 because look, it's a Horizon game, right? And people are like, ooh, but even that game, I don't know about users, but critically, it didn't do super well, right? It was just an okay, like mid game. So people weren't like, yeah, this is great. They were just kind of like, eh.
Asgard's Wrath is that
there
game
you
that
go.
got the perfect 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 dos Asgard's Wrath. Yeah. So I mean, that's I don't know, that the game looks fine. I remember they showed it off during the Game Awards, that game, but I don't believe that's a PSVR 2 game. I'm pretty sure it's a Quest 3 game. So, or maybe Quest 2 as well. I'm not sure if it's just 3 or I thought it was just a Quest 3 game, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I think those factors take into effect of why for this company, for First Contact, it seems like, I don't know if they made other games for other VR things, or if they just primarily worked with just the PSVR, like Sony stuff. But it seems like, if they just worked with Sony, then and just for the PSVR 2, I think the lack of support for the VR PSVR is probably what hurt for them. And I think even though VR is a cool thing and it's a cool experience, it's even after all these years, I don't think VR has really taken off like the industry is hoping for, right? It's still a cool thing, but it's still that barrier for entry, even for a Quest, is still high. And there's just not, I don't think there's a lot of people that have taken the leap to play, to get a VR headset or to play one or anything like that. So it still has a long ways to go, I think, before it's going to become more mainstream, I guess, where, everybody in their household has a VR headset, right? But let's go around and see what everybody else thinks. Pat, what do you think? You look like you're deep in concentration, thinking about a PSVR headset. What do you think, buddy?
I have probably said this multiple times, but I have never owned any of the VR headsets. Now, would I want to? Of course. I would love to own one and play a bunch of these games because, I want to see what the hype is about this day and age. But my problem is just as Nick said, I play my PlayStation so very rare these days. because unless it's a PlayStation exclusive, I'm on my Xbox. I just like I said, like the ecosystem. So for me, that's a really hard sell for $500 to play maybe a couple of games, maybe a handful of games, like maybe 2 to 5 games that I'm really interested in playing on the PlayStation. And then the problem is probably 2 or 3 of those games aren't PSVR 2; they're on the original PSVR, so I'm screwed there. And then there's probably down to 2 or 3 games that I really want to play. There's a more of a list of games that I want to play that's available on the Oculus or even the Valve, the Valve Index. So and to me, the Valve Index is outside of my price range. I'm not spending $1,000, $700 to $1,000. I think you can price it even down to $500 if you reduce the number of base stations, etc. But to get the experience that you want, that to me you need $1,000, which is the optimal number of base stations and everything you want. And then I really was like, I'm gonna bite the bullet and get a Quest right as they were raising the price from like $200 to $300 or something like that. And I'm like, well, you upgraded the price but didn't upgrade the hardware, so I'm out. And then they came out with they came out with the Pro first, which is nowhere near anything I would ever pay for that. And then the Quest 3, which came out at $500, I'm like, I'm not buying that. There's not enough out there for me to want to spend $500 on something. Now, I would love to own one to check it out and to play it, but I'm not spending that kind of money. So I'm in that realm of I don't have an extra $500 to $1,000 to just throw away on something like that. I try not to spend that much money. Like, I mean, I'll spend $300 on a monitor or something, but that's $300, and I'm like, and I'll get a lot more use out of that. And $300 is probably like where I put my max on a monitor for my computer. I'm not spending $400, $600, $800. And yet I have a plethora of games to play on that, right? I'm not limited by this only works with VR. This doesn't work with VR. So to me, I get a lot more use for my money on a $300 monitor than a $300 VR set. So that's my problem. But the studio, I don't think I don't know. I can't really say that it's the lack of support for VR within the industry. I think it could, you could phrase it that way. I am framing it as it's a lack of interest at price point, and lack of interest at price point. There's not a whole lot of games out there that I'm interested in playing in VR. The handful of games that I want to play on whatever VR system isn't enough of a FOMO for me to spend $300 to $500. That's where it boils down to, right? I wanted to play the Half-Life game forever. I have not got to play it because it's VR only. I've seen some mods out there, but from what I read, I want to experience this game in all of its VR glory. So I'm not able to do that. So I've yet to get to play it. Maybe one day I'll have something capable of playing it. Maybe, or maybe not. So there's just not, to me, price point is a problem. Number of games is a problem. And the lack and the exclusivity that's out there is a problem for me. Like, well, this one's only on PSVR 2. This one's only on Oculus. This one's only on, the HTC Vive and the Index, And when those were the big players out there, they were making games for everything. They're like, hey, if you can play it on the Valve Index, you can play it on the Vive, and et cetera, et cetera. But now, you got Quest in there, or Oculus. And Oculus was kind of open to everything, but it was just a little underpowered to play some of the higher end games. But, they upped their game a little bit, but they're starting to make exclusive stuff. So you're like, if I want to play this, then I need an exclusive, Quest. And I'm like, God, now if I want to play this, I need PSVR 2, because like I want to play the Call of the Mountain game, but that's one game, maybe 2, because I would like to try out some of the other games, but 2 or 3 games on the PSVR 2 that I really want to play. And then there's a smidgen of Quest games I want to play and a smidgen of Index games. And I'm like, so because there's no continuity in the industry where instead everybody's trying to push their own hardware, which makes sense in an established industry. But VR is not an established industry. It's a fledgling industry. And so what it means is these groups need to work together with developers to get a game published across the board. That way people aren't having to make that decision. And then once the industry is booming, where people, you have a 40% to 60% market saturation, then you could start saying, well, I'm going to make games only for mine, kind of like what Xbox and Sony do today. They're like, I make games only for mine, and vice versa, and switch because they've already got that established market footprint. Obviously in the early days, it was much easier when there wasn't competition, right? In the days of like, you know, in the early games, you had very few consoles. They made their own games, or they had some third parties, but it was mostly them making games for their system. So, but there wasn't this plethora of whatever. Nintendo used to control their, what they used to be the only ones that could make stuff for their own consoles, and then they started opening it up and allowing more stuff, but they moderated all of it, and they stopped moderating it, and you started getting a lot of shovelware, and then that evened out. So the industry doesn't exist, in my opinion, to support a VR only studio right now, especially if you're making games only for one or the other. Because I did go through kind of their games list, and they didn't make stuff exclusively for PlayStation, but when they made something, it was only for Quest or Oculus at the time. And then they made something for Vive and Quest. And then they had a couple of the other ones, the ones that made them famous, the full, the Firewall games and Firewall Ultra were PlayStation only. So, first of all, you pick the smallest pony in the stable to make an exclusive game for, in my opinion. You should have went with Quest or HTC or whatever, Steam or whatever, but they probably had bad taste in their mouth from the other games. The other two games I saw that they made outside of the two Firewall series looked darn good. It looked impressive for how old they were. So I want to play them, but price point pushes me out. So for that reason, price point and number of games that I can play for the money are out, because I'm spending $500 to $1,000 depending on which one I want, or I can go with the older Quest 2. But I don't know about you guys, but my brain looks at this and goes, why do I want the Quest 2 when the Quest 3 is out? And even though there's a $200 price difference, I'm like, my brain's not willing to let me downgrade to the Quest 2. It's like, no, you want the latest and greatest version of that to get all the cool bells and whistles. So for me, it doesn't work. What about you, Shane? I know that you have, PSVR, and I don't know if you have a Quest or not, but you've got some experience with VR where I don't. So you're in the same boat as Nick. You have a PSVR and a Quest too. So what are your thoughts on this?
First of all, condolences to the developers and their team, losing their jobs just right at the beginning of a new year. Gotta suck. Hopefully y'all land on your feet. But I agree that with everything you guys said, the market is still fledgling, like you said. I don't think you can do an exclusivity game until you get a little more saturation, you get a little more buildup. So like Nick said at the beginning, I did just a few checks, just quickly. So the PlayStation VR 2 sold just shy of 600,000 units 6 weeks from its launch. So Sony updated their forecast from 2 million to 1 million, and then they only sold 600,000. So that's a kick in the teeth. I think Sony's biggest problem is, like you said, Pat, it's money. It's just about, you're not paying $500 for PlayStation VR 2. You're paying $1,000, like you said, because you cannot have PlayStation VR without a PlayStation. Granted, most gamers, especially PlayStation fans, are going to have that, but that's still a big bite for even the devoted. So, and then on the Quest, I do have a Quest 2 and a PlayStation VR 1. Love them both. They're both very interesting. And yes, that Asgard's Wrath, or whatever the heck that game was, is available on Quest 2. You can play it on there, according to Googly. So the Quest sales, the Quest 2 is actually outselling the Quest 3. And most likely it's price, plain and simple. Especially picking the last couple of years to launch a new anything is kind of tricky, because there's a lot of questions about incomes and stock and all that good stuff. I'm not a big finance guy, but I just know my money's tight. So there's things like that. Now, I would agree that lack of interest is a small part of it, but it's all going to come down to the biggest things, because the three of us would have a PSVR 2 if it was $200, maybe three. But I don't, because it's not. So that's it. I don't have the Quest 3. My son wanted it for Christmas. No, I don't think so, because there's still stuff you can play on the Quest 2 that's on the Quest 3. And when it comes down in price, just like I got the Quest 2, came down in price, I got it. PlayStation VR, the first one, came down in price, I got it. It came down to points of price that I could afford. Two, they had games at that point, because PlayStation VR, Quest, they're the game markets, as far as quality games, not shovelware, but actual quality games, are not in abundance, plain and simple. Nick, you brought over, I believe it was Resident Evil 4 VR on your Quest one day. And this is a couple of years ago, so it's not like the newfangled version of it. And it was fun. It was interesting. But is a 15-year-old game just thrown into VR, is it really a system seller now? So I think there's lots of reasons why VR is having its issues. I think there's lots of reasons that this developer unfortunately has had to go down. And I think you're right, Pat. They need to work together for now. I think Quest, Oculus, the PlayStation, that $1,000 one, they need to say, all right, guys, look, let's kind of team up for the next year. Let's put games out on everybody. Let's build up a base, and let's go a little cheaper, probably, because a $60 game on a very weak platform, that's hard to push, especially even for us. I mean, excuse me, we're all gamers, love games, play in any format except for the phone. So that's a hard push on people. So, but again, my condolences to the developers. Excuse me, and I hope they get back on their feet. From the reviews on the game on their games, they've got talent. So let's hope they can bounce back.
Yep, for sure. And yeah, I agree with you too, Shane, that the other problem with VR is the lack of quality games, right? A lot of it is just shovelware or stuff that seems like more of a tech demo than an actual full-fledged game. And very rarely, now I don't play a lot of VR games, and I haven't played a ton of them, but very rarely do you come across ones that are actually really good and really fun, right? Some of them are all right, but they don't really hold your attention for very long. And some of them I played that are really fun, right? I think out of, and granted, now keep in mind, I don't play a ton of VR, but the VR I have played, the most I've ever played of any VR game, there's probably two games that I've played the most of, and they're really freaking old at this point, and that's Beat Saber and Job Simulator. Those two games are, and still today, those two games are absolutely super fun. And I've played other VR games, and those two games in particular, I could say I could go back and continue playing. I played Arizona Sunshine. Arizona Sunshine's really fun, but it's you only do so much in it. You're shooting zombies. It's pretty much the same as everything. I've played the Star Wars game, which is not too bad. I've played what is that one? Shoot, I can't think of it, but I played it.
Didn't you play Half-Life, Alex, a little bit?
I did play Alex, yes.
But it was like really janky because of your setup.
Yeah, I had to turn my graphics down a potato, but I could play it. And I did. I played about, I don't know, maybe a third of it. Maybe I was halfway through it. I can't remember. It was just because I played it with the Quest 2. There is a way to do it. You just got to jump through some hoops, but you can get it working. And so, I do want to go back to it, but I wanted to go back to it with I wish this is one thing and this is off the topic here, but I wish one thing Valve would do, and I know they won't, is they should put Alex on other things like the Quest. And yeah, I mean, I think the Quest 3 has it, but the Quest 2, you don't have the individual finger thing like the Valve, Valve VR has. But
Index.
I think Quest 3 has that. So it's like put Alex out on other crap, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to play it. They just don't want to spend $1,000 for a Steam Index, right? That might have a Quest and be like, man, or might have the new Quest 3 and be like, man, I would really love to play Alex on this. I mean, it can be done. They just have to jump through the hoops to get it done and working on there. But, to have it natively just supported onto the VR, kind of like what you guys said, just, I understand wanting to have exclusive stuffs for your VR system, but the industry is small and it is very hard I feel like for the VR industry to get a foothold on the gaming market. I mean, VR has been around forever and it still hasn't really gone anywhere, right? I mean, graphically and stuff, it's gotten better. Games have gotten better. But as far as the foothold in the market, it really hasn't seemed to have grabbed like they thought it were, right? I mean, a few years ago, we were talking about VR and the whole industry was talking about how VR was just going to sweep through and just like a tornado and just pick everything up. And that was the new thing and get ready. And oh my God. And that didn't happen. It didn't come out with a bang and went beep. and it's still there, but people are like, what's that over there? Oh, that's VR.
Same thing with 3D. It was supposed to be the next, and it was the not. So I think the only way VR is going to jump into the mainstream like a traditional console is if they can get that lawnmower man immersion where you can, strap on, strap up, and then you are physically a part of the game. Now they have those treadmills, quad mill things that, you can run around in your game and stuff like that. But who the hell's got the money?
Or when you were a kid too.
Yeah. Yeah. But who's got the money for that? Even today, the cost of something like that is astonishing. I mean, granted, if I had the money, I would have it. Because if I had the money, I would have the space, so I wouldn't worry about it. But you're talking thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for something like that. So until that kind of technology can come down to price, like a console price, I don't see VR being the monster hit that they would like it to be. No, it's great that some games are nailing it. And I agree with Nick. I think Beat Saber is probably my favorite. Even though you look like you're licking a window from the outside, on the inside, you're ninja, you're Jedi. I mean, so there's a long way to go.
Yeah. And I think the one company who's doing it right, in my opinion, is Oculus. I think with the way that they're positioning their VR, right? Not to say that the Index isn't more superior or a better product. Not to say that the HTC Vive isn't, I don't know much about the Vive, but it may be a superior, better product. But what Quest is doing, what Oculus is doing, is they're basically, those are $1,000 systems that require high-end PCs to operate. Whereas the Quest is a standalone device. And that's what you have to do to get adoption, right, from consumers, is you have to have a cheaper product. Because even with the Quest 3, which it is $500, but that's still $500 cheaper than an Index or an HTC, right? And you don't need anything else. You don't need a high-end PC. You don't need a PlayStation 5. You just need to go out and buy the $500 headset and you can play VR games, right? And so I think they're doing it right. And I think that having an all-encompassing headset is the right way to go. I think because even with the Quest, you can hook the Quest into your VR PC and play more high-end games with it, right? They do support it with a program called Sideload or something like that, right? Where you can play off the Quest store games like ones from Steam and stuff, through your VR headset by hooking it into your PC, and those higher quality games, kind of like Alex in that case, right? So it does have that capability. It can do both. It's both worlds type of thing. Unlike Index and HTC, where you have to be hooked in, you got to be jacked in, right? And I hate to say that for the freaking Facebook, but I think they're taking the right approach to how they should handle VR, right? Once VR gets established and gets its foothold, kind of like you guys were saying, then you could possibly make more proprietary stuff, kind of follow the whole, go the whole route of making things proprietary and all that crap. But right now you need to make it easy for a consumer to get into it and to enjoy it. And the best way to make that easy is to make an all encompassing headset and sell it for $500 or less. Right.
Yep. Cut those cords. I think cutting the cord would be a big help.
Cut the cords.
Because I mean, the PlayStation's fun. Even I've got the PlayStation VR 1. The cords still get in the way. They're all in the back of my headset, but when I'm flinging my lightsaber and Beat Saber, I feel them back there, and it's just annoying because it. But when I put on my Quest 2, it's a different thing. It really feels more immersive because you don't have those cords hanging off your back. So, but hey, we can't all be lawnmower man.
It's true, man. All right. You guys got anything else you want to say to this on this subject?
Nope.
All right. Well, again, like Shane said, hopefully the people at First Contact Entertainment are able to bounce back, and those individuals there. It sucks to see another studio, regardless of what games they make or, what platform they make games for, to see them go under. Because I mean, that Firewall game, it looks pretty fun. Like, I don't know if it would really be something I'd be super into, but I would definitely check it out. So it sucks to see a developer like that go under and have to close their doors. But like we were saying, VR is still in its infancy. In a sense, especially when it comes to the market, it just doesn't have the strong grasp on the market like they were hoping it would have, right? Industry analysts and things like that were thinking it was going to have. So let us know down in the comments below. What do you guys think of VR? Do you have a VR headset? Did you get one for Christmas? Did you get you a Quest 3 or a PSVR 2 or an Index or something, or a Vive for Christmas? Let us know. And if you are playing VR games, what games are your favorite? Which VR games do you like? Also, what do you think about VR in the industry and its continued support? I think VR, unlike 3D televisions and unlike 3D, I think VR will be around for the long haul. I think it'll just take a lot longer time. I don't see 3D, but who knows? I don't know. I was going to say I don't see 3D coming back, but how many times does things come back and died off again? Numerous. So 3D will be back eventually, probably. The next time you won't need glasses. You can just see the 3D.
That's what the world wanted, but they wouldn't give.
Yeah. Well, they got rid of the black and red glasses.
Hallucinogenic.
Right? Blue and red.
It's going to be a hallucinogenic TV system. That's how you get VR.
It just opens up a little. It opens up a little panel, has a little pill in there. You just take that before you watch.
What was that Batman with Kilmer when Jim Carrey was the Riddler and they had that damn...
When they had that headset,
that hat, it just beam it all into your brain.
There you go. That's what it's going to be. Beam the VR into my brain.
It'd be like Existenz if you saw that movie where you just pour it into your spinal cord and you can't tell whether you're in a game or the real world.
I'm in.
Or is that like the Matrix as well, right?
Or the surrogate in. Why not the surrogates too, where they had VR bodies,
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, I don't remember what we were talking about, but let us know down in the comments below. What were we talking about? No, let us know about your VR stuff down in the comments. But other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. Hit the like button if you liked the video. Hit the subscribe button. Help us out by hitting that subscribe button and the bell notifications to stay up to date with new videos that we do all the time. We'll see you next time.
See ya.